everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Faerie Conclave. I'm your host, Alec. My pronouns are he, him. This is episode 83, and I'm super excited for this one because I'm doing another Commander Deck interview with an extra special guest. It's Ron. How are you doing today, Ron?
I'm doing fantastic. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm Ron. I'm a girl named Ron everywhere usernames exist, and my pronouns are she, her.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel like most people probably know who you are, or at least follow you on Twitter. But yeah, to introduce you a little bit more, you are a Twitch streamer and you stream a whole lot of Magic content. And lately, I have been really enjoying your Spell Table Commander gameplay
Thank you.
streams, and they've been awesome.
Thanks so much.
We were kind of like chatting a little bit about it before we started recording, but you spend time and energy like cultivating your pods and trying to put together a good play experience where everyone has fun playing Commander. And I just wanted to shout out that I think that's awesome, and that you can definitely feel it when you're like watching it and when you're in chat when the people playing the game are having a good time and also chatting and hanging out with each other. And I get that feeling a lot from your streams.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think that what benefited me was that I never started get when I got into Magic, I only started learning about Spell Table and Discord and Twitch just this January because if you recall, in December, the pandemic caught like a new wave of COVID and it got really bad. And I'm a teacher, and our school,
Mm.
which had been open, told us not to come back after the Christmas break for the first 2 weeks of January. And I said, well, if school's closing, maybe the stores will start closing again, and I won't be able to play in person anymore. So in January, when those 2 weeks of school were closed, I said, I better figure out how to play online. So I started looking at Discord servers and Twitch streams and Spell Table, and I became much more active in Twitter. So my Twitter profile actually says that it was created like, I don't know, in 2010 or something ridiculous like that, but like
Mm.
in January I had like 20 followers and I didn't know any of who they were. Like I just never used Twitter until January, even though I created it ages ago. So from then until now, I just started guest streaming. I networked myself with a group of people, and through them I met other friends, and I started guest streaming, and I got to know a lot of people and how they play, and I've become friends with a lot of people just by guest streaming with them. And then people started tagging me in like, who's your favorite content creator posts? And I'm like, I don't create any content. Like I'm like, I don't do that. So it was never my intention to become a content creator or streamer, but people seem to really enjoy my presence and really want it. So I said, why not? Like this sounds fun. I think I could probably do that. So around May, I started creating my own content on Twitch, and when I thought of curating pods, I already had a wealth of experience of people in the community that I had played with. So I know people's play styles and personalities, and I kind of had a jump start on who might mesh well together, or games that I've had that were particularly fun, and whose energy matches each other. So when I invite guests, I try to replicate that kind of like lighthearted experience, which I know doesn't always, sometimes I'll end up with a stranger, and that's not always gonna happen, but I do try to make it a fun, enjoyable watch, right? Because lots of people
Yeah.
love playing Magic, but not everyone likes to watch it. So it has to be a fun pod to be watchable, otherwise it's just boring.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I love that origin story too. I think that's one of my favorite things about, especially like the Twitter community for Magic, but also just kind of like Magic Online, especially in the last year or two. It is just like super welcoming and
Yeah.
like very friendly, and you can like respond to people's stuff and they'll respond back. And it's, yeah, I've always felt like the friendliness in the Magic community is something that that kind of keeps me going here. So yeah,
Yeah,
I really
for
like it.
sure. As much as people say that there's discourse and there's cattiness or whatever, like overall, I really haven't experienced much of that. Like, yeah, there's discourse and yeah, there's some like shitheads that happen sometimes. I'm sorry, can I
Yeah.
curse? I was like, I didn't clear that with you earlier.
Oh, no, no. Yeah,
Um,
you're good.
there's some there's some bad folks, and but the community does really well at identifying and removing them quickly.
Yeah, it's true.
So, I feel like 95% of my experience, if I had to like guess and put a number on it, has been extremely positive and welcoming and
Yeah.
kind. So, and maybe I've just been fortunate, but yeah, I think overall I've really enjoyed being in the Magic community, and I found it really welcoming, and I was able to get to know people really quickly and network myself a lot faster than I ever expected to.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think that's something that definitely makes me happy about this community. It's and I'm reminded of it when I kind of go into other games, or like especially sometimes like video game
Hmm.
Twitter spheres. I'll just see some terrible stuff and realize that it's kind of commonly accepted for that. Whereas, kind
Yeah.
of like what you mentioned, if something pops up that is that shouldn't be there in the Magic community, I feel like everyone does a pretty good job of being like, no, 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 you should not be saying that, and please delete it. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm glad that I think the networking is awesome, especially for streamers. One thing that I always look for when I'm like going to ask somebody to be a guest on this podcast is I really like if they are a streamer, because it gives me like I can do like a little mini interview of if I think they'll be a good fit for
Right.
just chatting with me for an
Yeah.
hour. And I find that streamers are always um, they have like a really good skill set for like talking to chat and like paying attention to what's going on with your other guests, and you can kind of
Yeah.
yeah, you can get a good feel for that. I think that translates to podcasts really well. So yeah, I'm glad that there's lots of kind of like networking and collaboration there.
Yeah, the last thing you want on a podcast is silence or like one word answers. It's like, okay,
Right.
well then, you know, this is an episode that'll never air.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like I I was on a panel at a convention recently, and somebody in the audience had asked, about getting into content creation and like,
Mm,
what would everyone's advice be on getting started? And I said, a lot of I stepped into it by accident. I didn't go into this thinking I'm going to be a content creator and this is how I'm going to go about it. Like I just wanted to play Magic and not have a shut down game store. And I happened to
yeah.
fall into a community of friends that were all streamers, and then their fans were like, I want to see Ron stream, and I'm like, okay, then I'll stream. Like I just happened to just step into it. And it was never my plan, but I at risk of sounding arrogant, and I'm not trying to sound arrogant, I just am aware, I'm aware that I'm a dynamic personality, and I'm aware that I, am witty and I say things off the cuff and I talk a lot and I'm very expressive and people find it funny and watchable. And that is not an act I put on. That's just who I am. And, um, I said, I don't really have advice, but if you're not fun to watch, then you're not going to be successful. People don't just want you to say, "Oh, I like playing Magic, so I'm going to play Magic and video record it." That's not fun. That's not watchable. You have to have something that's special, that's you, that people want to come and watch. So, what is that thing? And play off of it. And
Yeah.
I'm just like unapologetically honest, and I say what people are thinking, but maybe are too timid to say or
Mm,
afraid that it'll come out wrong. And I just find like a funny way to say it, and I'll like, bring it up, and then people are like, "Ooh, I love that." And that's maybe my thing. If I had to think, if I had to pick, what's my thing, that's probably my thing and what keeps people watching. But yeah, everybody has a thing and you have to play off that. You can't be a carbon copy of somebody else, or just like, oh, I'm gonna hit play on a camera and, hit record on a camera and go. That's just not enough. Sometimes it's about just innate personality kind of thing.
yeah. Yeah. I think the personality is just something that I enjoy interacting with so much. Like that's why have such a good time bringing guests on for this podcast is just like getting to know people's personalities and trying to kind of like ask them questions that'll get them to I don't know, talk about themselves a little bit more. I think is something that I just like talking about. It's so much fun to do. And
You'll never have a problem getting me to talk about myself. I'm long-winded.
I love it. Yeah, I was gonna say I'm usually the person in the friend group who's like a little too timid to say what everyone is thinking, and then when somebody like you like just says it, I'm like, oh, I'm so glad that she said that. Like, thank you for that.
Yeah, I do have. It's funny because I do have quite a big friend group of female streamers that we're in a big group chat. And sometimes, like, I'll say something or comment on something, and then the group chat will be like, "Oh my God, I'm so glad you said that because I was thinking it, but I didn't know how to say it." I'm like, "Don't worry, I got you." Like, if anybody's gonna say it, it's me. So
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. I think everyone needs a friend like that. And I do think that lends itself really nicely to streaming and just kind of like being a like upbeat personality that is kind of like you said, like playing the game, of course, but also being able to like explain what's happening and like kind of vibe and chat with the other players and make it a little bit more of a show, I guess. Yeah, I think all of that makes it really fun to watch. And
I also famously like hate the disingenuous like streamer voice, you know, when people are like, "Wow, hello, welcome to my stream. Today's guest," you know, like that's like really like extra put on, and I hate that. I'm like, who are you? That's not the voice you were using like 5 minutes ago in Rule Zero, you know, like it's just so it's off-putting, and I'm like, that's so fake. So when I was on, it's funny because I talked about that on that TCG guy stream, right, Corey?
yeah.
I was on his stream as a guest, and I talked about how much I hate fake streamer voice and how uncomfortable it makes me. And he's like, "Oh God, do I do that?" And I'm like, "No, like you do have like a welcome voice, like hello, welcome to my pod, blah blah, you know, but it's not like blah blah." And so I started doing it. I started doing streamer voice, and people in the chat said I sounded like Ash Ketchum, and then they kept giving me like Pokemon quotes to say, so in Ash Ketchum voice, and then Corey added it to his channel points that you could pay channel points to make somebody do streamer voice, and so my good. Streamer voice just happens to be Ash Ketchum. So
okay, I love that yours is Ash. That's epic. Yeah, I mean
inadvertently. It was an accident, a happy accident.
Yeah, I totally understand what you mean, and I mean, you heard the intro to this podcast just like 10 minutes ago, and I definitely have like a welcome voice.
But it's by no means streamer voice.
Yeah, I kind of like also love and think it's hilarious when people, when I know I know exactly what you're talking about. My partner makes fun of me sometimes for my like intro to the podcast voice, but it's just a thing now. Like it's kind of funny.
It's like the mom voice, the mom talking to somebody on the phone making an appointment, and it's like, yes, hello, I'm making an appointment, and it's like, Mom, you don't talk like that. Like, what the hell is that voice, you know? It's always there's always this little tiny it's like just a slight change, but somebody that really knows you, like, it's like, you don't talk like that.
They're like giving you that side eye while you're on the phone, and that's so good. I love it. So that's, I mean, I've loved the content you've been making lately, and I honestly, like, I was surprised to hear that you've only been streaming since May.
Yes, I've only been playing Magic, period, since last April. So it's wild. About 15 months now. And I started, my first guest stream was on Lua Stardust's anniversary stream, where she streamed for like a whole day. So it was like late January. I want to say like January 24th or something like that was my first guest stream. And then I started guest streaming more in February and March, and then I started my own Twitch in like May. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, it definitely
it's only been a couple months.
That's cool. Yeah, it's very like everything's set up professionally, and you've got like your stream overlay looks great.
Thank you.
So yeah, I love it. I would have not have believed if you told me it had only been a few months. So
I've been busy. I put
yeah,
a lot of time and work in because anything, I mean, it's fun for me. It doesn't really feel like work, but anything worth doing is worth doing well. And I really care that it's as good as I can get it to be. I mean, I don't know what I'm doing half the time. I'm not really great at technology, but I Google everything and I watched YouTube
yep.
videos and I asked some friends for help and I did everything on my own because I'm only child syndrome and I'm really like if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself and that's just like my life mantra. Even if it means that I stay up all night long and complicate my life doing it, it's like I've got to figure it out myself because then the day that something goes wrong, I don't know how to fix it if somebody else did it for me. So I spent a lot of time to put things together, but I have a better understanding of how things work now, and I'm learning. But I'm having fun doing it. It doesn't feel like work yet.
Nice. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. And I know it takes a ton of work just to like get your Twitch set up and OBS to
Yeah.
work correctly, and not change its settings randomly on you, and yeah, all that kind of
Right.
stuff. It's a ton of work. So yeah,
Yeah.
amazing job. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so I brought you on to talk about one of your commander decks, which I'm super excited about. But before we get into it, let's do our community spotlight for the episode, which is where we take a few minutes to shout out another content creator in the Magic world. And today, I wanted to do a shout out for the Helm of the Hosts podcast, which is brand new. They just had their first episode 2 days ago as of this recording, but it'll probably have been a week or so ago when this comes out. And it was awesome. It's hosted by Deanna, who is also known as Ms. Eldritch, and Adam, also known as Adam the Gatherin on Twitter. And it was a fantastic episode. It was kind of introductory, and they talked about their backgrounds in Magic and how they got started in it and that kind of thing. And they brought on Bobby Christine as a guest for the episode, who is a lovely and amazing person who has some of the best insights into playing social commander formats that I've ever seen. So yeah, the first episode is out on YouTube, and I'll have a link to that in the episode description. But you should definitely go check it out and subscribe because I loved every second of it, and I can't wait for more episodes.
I can't wait to check it out. I haven't heard it yet, but I'm eager to. Miss Eldritch is one of my very good friends. We're in a group called the Birds of Paradise
Mm,
together, and so it's top of my to-do list has been really crazy, but today I actually have my freest schedule is today, so that's gonna be
nice.
my thing to do while I'm sorting cards.
I love it. Yeah. Recording podcasts, listening to podcasts. It sounds like a
Yeah,
good day.
it's a podcast day.
I love it. And I don't think I've actually talked about Birds of Paradise on the podcast before. I might have with um, Bobby Christine, but I can't remember. Would you like to give a little bit of background to that? Because I do think that that account and that idea is very important.
Yes, actually. I had been invited to a few command fests, and in talking to we've been in this group chat, the girls and I, for a long time prior to even Command Fest being released. And we just talk about everything, outside of Magic stuff as well. But we've all become a circle of good friends, and we're all across the country from each other. There's people from Texas, people from Chicago area, people from Seattle area. I'm in northern New Jersey, just outside of New York City. So we're here, there, everywhere, and never were in the same place at the same time. Um, so we all decided that we would like to all go to Command Fest Bellevue. And then we decided, well, why not be a squeaky wheel and ask to be invited guests to Command Fest, and we proposed an idea that we didn't want to be invited guests for like notoriety or to be a face on a bill, like on a guest list post or something like that. But we wanted to utilize our our names and our fan base, for lack of a better word, for good. And so, and we really wanted to just be in the same place at the same time and do something for a worthy cause together. So we determined that we would run a run a table at the space for a charitable organization, and we all agreed on Trans Lifeline. Um, so we wanted to take as much money as possible to donate to Trans Lifeline. So we were taking donations of prizes that we could give away or things we could do with folks. We decided we would play Jumpstart at our table if Pastimes should accept us as guests, and we would do a suggested donation, and folks could play Jumpstart games with us, and they were free to keep their decks and donate to Trans Lifeline while we were there. Pastimes liked the idea. We had some back and forth with them, and we made agreements on what we were allowed to do and what we were not allowed to do. Because of state gambling laws, we couldn't like do raffles or prize wheels or, like you give us this much money and you could win a blah, blah, blah. That was considered gambling. So we had to do suggested donation only. There were 8 of us. So 8 of us individually ran streams to pay into a GoFundMe, which covered our costs to fly out there, our costs to stay at an Airbnb together, and our costs for the Jumpstart boxes and prizes. Because anybody who donated to help us get out there, we did a giveaway on our own, like on Twitter. So if you donated this much, you were eligible to win a box of New Capenna, or if you donated this much, you were eligible to win a guest spot on our stream. So that way, we were able to get our entire group out to Command Fest for free, based on donations, and all of our prizes and product we were able to get donated to us. And then that meant that every single dollar that we collected while we were there went completely and directly to Trans Lifeline. Our total expenses that we fundraised were about $3,000, and then we raised an additional $1,500 for Trans Lifeline in just the 2 days that we were there in person.
Wow.
Yeah, which was phenomenal. So we didn't want our pictures individually on the website. So we just, because we were technically invited guests, so Pastimes was like, what should we put on the website? So we decided to create a group name, and we all agreed upon Birds of Paradise. And we created a logo, and so our faces aren't on the Command Fest Bellevue website. It is just Birds of Paradise as a group, and Deanna is one of the members of Birds of Paradise, and we try to frequently discuss issues among, social issues among Magic and Magic players, and we try to fundraise to benefit groups that we feel are marginalized or in need. So it's not always just Trans Lifeline, but that was the one we had chosen for Command Fest Bellevue.
Nice. Yeah, first of all, I appreciate your transparency when it comes to like how much funding you raised and like how much it costs.
Yeah.
And all of that for flying everyone out. But I think honestly this is a thing that should be happening at every Command Fest and an event that it can. I think it's super important, and there's so many people that go to those events that it just seems like an important thing to do that y'all have done amazingly, and that I hope continues into other events, and amazing choice of charity and all that kind of stuff. I think
Thank you.
was just awesome and inspiring, and I'm really glad that I could kind of like see it unfold on Twitter and that it all worked out. And yeah,
I think there was some criticism. I know we appeared on like some Reddit like trash talking page, and people were criticizing us for fundraising to get out there, and it's like it's a lot of money, and we wouldn't have been able to afford going out there on our own, but it's the bigger picture was not for us to have a vacation covered, we wanted to get our name out and have a reputable convention under our belts so that it becomes easier to become a presence at more local cons in our own locations, you know? Um, so we did, and the fundraising we did for our expenses was between each of us, which there's 8 of us, and we spent like a month streaming to collect that. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
each of us were, it took us a long time to get there. And, you know, when you compare how many hours of work each of us put in to get that much from streaming, versus what we were able to collect in 2 days for Trans Lifeline, um, it really is a benefit, you know, like people, I think the criticism online was like, well, why didn't people just pay into the donation instead of like paying for your expenses and you just not go? Or like, if you can't afford to go, then don't go. Um, but there is a lot of moving parts to that, and I think that we are better set up for, you know, if a company doesn't know you, has never heard of you, if you've never done a con before, it's really hard for them to put faith in you and accept you, especially if there's 8 tickets that they have to give away. That's a lot of money lost for them. They're not going to readily give a group of 8 people free tickets to a weekend long convention, much less cover their costs. So,
Right.
it gave us good faith, you know. It allowed us an opportunity to say we've done this as a group and we have evidence that the money went where we said it was going to go and it was a legitimate charity, and you know, this helps us in the future. um, and the more cons we do, the more we're able to put into those charities.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense to me, and I think every con pays for a certain amount of guest spotlights, right? That are like their hotels are covered or their Airbnbs and their flights are covered and all that kind of thing. And so being able to someday have that happen where you don't actually have to raise that part of the money and you can just raise all of the money for the charity that you've chosen
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
something you have to work on getting towards. So
Yeah.
and hopefully that does happen because I feel like, you know, if a con can have a certain amount of people they can fly out to go attend their event, then some amount of them should be doing something along these lines that are helpful for charities and important causes and all the things that you talked about earlier that you stand for, and I love every bit of it. So yeah, I'm like fully on
Thank
board
you.
for it.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, and thank you also for just diving into that. I wasn't really planning on getting into the Birds of Paradise, but I just realized I hadn't really talked about it yet, and I've been wanting
Yeah.
to.
Oh, great. Well, yeah, the full circle here is that because Deanna, Miss Eldridge, is one of the birds. She was a big contributor to she did a really long full stream where she got a lot of donations, and she was a large contributor to our group, and she is half of Helm of the Host. So
Yeah.
you know, she's doing great things, and she's a large asset to our group. So
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for
yeah.
bringing it back around.
Yeah.
And yeah, everyone go listen to Helm of the Hosts. And yeah, so I guess it's time. I think we should dive into
hmm
the Commander Deck interview. Um, and
Absolutely.
let's do it. So my first question for you is, who is the commander we're going to be talking about, and what inspired you to build this deck?
Okay, the commander that we are going to talk about is Kwain in Itinerant Meddler. Um, not fun full name. We'll just call him Kwain.
I
That's good.
Yeah, I feel like I I don't, I just realizing I don't think I've ever said that correctly. So
Yeah,
yeah, thank you.
Kwain Itinerant Meddler. It's a mouthful. There's too many vowels. Um, so what inspired me to build this deck is actually a good friend of mine. He's an artist. He's at the Ricky Thomas. He and I famously months ago had like a fake Twitter feud. It wasn't so much fake, like we weren't trying to fake it, but it was we just tease each other and it's all out of love, and we, you know, for a while I think some people are like, "Wait, do you guys like actually hate each other?" And we're like, "No. This is how we show each other love, you know?" Like, so we just would pick on each other all the time like for funsies. And he said, that all my decks are gross. I don't even think I build that strongly, but he's like, all your decks are gross. They're all disgusting. They're all mean. You always kill me. I can't play against you. I was like, this is such horseshit. So I was like, fine, I'm gonna build the nicest deck so you can't possibly say anything. And I just like spent, I don't know, like a month building this deck because I was like, it's got to be the nicest deck anyone has ever seen. Like, I I do not attack with this deck at all unless I'm goaded. Um, I only win by alternate win con. It's an Azorius deck, so I looked up every possible alternate win con in Azorius. And I worked really hard on the synergy. I do not have any removal in the deck because I thought that was too mean to remove things. I do have a lot of protection and a lot of counters for people trying to remove my stuff, but I don't have any like board wipes or anything like that. And I don't swing out with it because I want it to be the group huggiest of all group hug decks. And it was Ricky that inspired me to build it because he said I was gross.
Okay, I love that because it's just like how can you argue with somebody at the table sitting down and making you draw an extra card every turn? Like that's such a nice thing
Yeah.
to do. There's no way.
And gain life. You draw a card and
Right.
gain life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so. One of my friends who has been on the podcast before, and it's been a long time, but Cole has a Kwain deck, and
Hmm.
he has similar feelings. Like sometimes he just doesn't want to like destroy other people's stuff because they're having fun with it, and
Yeah.
he doesn't want to attack people because it's uh, I don't know, it's just not feeling too aggressive today. And Queen is like the perfect deck to get out in that moment where it's just like everyone's gonna have a good time. But I love that you've incorporated the alternate win cons into this. That's something that's like an idea that I've just had for like years probably, of like a deck with all these alternate win cons. and
Yeah.
I just think it's a really neat idea. Like that's really fun to kind of try to go for something like near death experience to win the game.
Yeah.
Like something like that
Near
is so
death
cool.
experience is hilarious. I had it in hand and I was at one life, but I couldn't play it fast enough.
Ooh.
And it was so like I was so close to winning with it once and I was like, "Ah, one day I'm gonna win with that card." Um but yeah, there's something like, I don't know, like 10 or 12 alternate win cons in this. And
Whoa.
I keep swapping cards around in it as well because I do have a big sideboard of cards that I was considering. So sometimes I do move things around within it. Like I recently took out Halo Fountain just because it's untap certain creature, like untap 15 taps creatures and you win the game.
Yeah.
But I don't attack with this deck, so it would be hard to get those creatures tapped, that many creatures anyway. So I removed it, though I kept it in the sideboard just because I don't want to forget about it in case, for whatever reason, I want to put it back in.
That makes sense. Yeah, my next question was going to be like what changes has the deck gone through since you first built it? But yeah, it makes sense. I think Halo Fountain is
Yeah,
it's more for like if your commander has a way for you to like tap a bunch of creatures without attacking,
right.
because it is hard when you have 1/1s and stuff to try to
Yeah,
get them untapped.
I did change out I think it's constantly changing by like one card here and there, you know?
Gotcha. Yeah.
Um just if I feel like a card just isn't playing right, I might take it out and swap it for something else. Or if I see a card that I hadn't thought of before and I'm like, oh, that looks really good, or that might play well, or something that's new, I'll throw it in and see how it plays and test it out. So it kind of is always changing by like one card or two, but I feel like I'm really happy with it, so it's hard for me to make big changes in it.
Gotcha. Yeah,
I
it's
don't want to
nice.
change the integrity of it, you know?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's nice when you get a deck to that point though.
Yeah.
I still have a couple where I'm like considering changing it enough that I'll have to like change out like 20 cards or something.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's really nice to have a deck where you're like, if a new cool card that fits in this, like a new alternate win condition or something, you'll like be okay with the ratios, I guess, and you're like putting
Yeah,
something in like one card at
right.
a time. Yeah,
Exactly.
I like it. Yeah, I'm just like looking through the deck list. I'm seeing a lot of hilarious cards in here.
Oh yeah, for sure.
um,
There's some really silly stuff. Some stuff that like
yeah,
when I play it, people are like, "What is that? What does that
exactly.
do?" Like they have no idea. They've never seen the card before, and it's like I just deep searched Scryfall, and I like searched specific keywords like, you know, that player or all players may, or something like that.
Yeah,
Put it into play, put onto the battlefield. Like, I just searched things that I thought would benefit everyone at all times. I didn't want anything that like overly benefited me.
gotcha.
So yeah, and people say, "Oh, group hug, that's a lot of card draw." And it's like, yes, there are a lot of cards that do allow everyone to draw cards, but this deck is much more than just drawing cards. There's a lot of other things in it. It allows you to play things for free, cast things off the top of your library, play things from your hand for free. Like there's the Blue Braids Conjurer Adept. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player may put an artifact, creature, or land card from their hand onto the battlefield, no cost. There's an artifact called Gate to the Aether. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player can reveal the top card of his or her library. If it's an artifact, creature, or enchantment or land, they may put it into play. So it's like another Braids, and you can just play
Ooh,
things either off the top of your library or from your hand with both of them. So there's a lot of free stuff for folks. There's
yeah,
a lot of like um gifts in this deck.
yeah.
Um So, yeah, there's no tricks. A lot of people say, "Oh, I have a Kwain deck and it's a group hug," but then there's always a catch, right? There's got to be a way to win. So,
Yeah,
they'll play out a combo or they'll end up attacking, and mine just does not do that. I do have creatures in case I need blockers, but all the creatures also do something, right? They provide some sort of ability that is group huggy or beneficial to me in protecting me.
gotcha. Yeah, I like that you have other things to give besides card draw.
Yeah.
I have played against. It's been a long time, but I feel like back around when Kenios and Tiro came out, the like 4-color kind of group huggy
Mm-hmm.
commanders. There was a
Mm-hmm.
long time where a lot of people were playing group hug decks, and they were mainly either like just card draw for everyone,
Yeah.
and I had a lot of games where just doing card draw all the time doesn't really get anyone anywhere except to be playing more board wipes a lot, and like the games would get really grindy.
Yeah.
So I really like how you have braids and other effects that get like stuff into play that aren't just drawing more cards into people's hands. But a solid amount of getting cards into people's hands is exciting too, for a lot of games.
Well, sure. I mean, there's also things like force fruition. So whenever an
Mm,
opponent plays a spell, that player draws 7 cards. So there's a little element of like, if I don't win by alternate win con, I'm gonna try to win by decking you.
nice. Yeah, that's
Um,
that's a fun card.
and I have multiple ways to give myself no max hand size in this. So, one of my favorite things to do with this deck, if when I have a very large hand because of all the card draw, is to then play something like Windfall, which is each player discards their hand, then draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards that player discarded. So if I have like a 20 card hand, then everybody's drawing 20 cards. And I have Laboratory Maniac and Jace, where if you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, you win the game instead. Both of them do the same thing. And actually, funny enough, somebody was playing a mill deck and they were milling me out. So I played Laboratory Maniac and they were like, haha, immediately removed it. And then I immediately played Jace. And it was like, and then they had no more removal because they used it on Labman, but Jace does the same thing. And I was like,
Yeah.
haha, like go ahead and mill me, you know? And then Jace's ability is target player puts the top two cards of their library into their graveyard and then draw a card. So I just
Ooh,
targeted myself and I drew
nice.
myself out the last three cards or whatever it was, you know? So it has a lot of ways that you can try to draw people out. You can try to draw yourself out and then play Jace and Labman or Labman. There's a lot of protection, like Swans of Brynargle is if a source would deal damage to swans, prevent all that damage, and the source's controller draws cards equal to the damage prevented that way.
Ooh, that's
Um,
cool.
yeah, so it like doesn't die unless you remove it because it just sucks up the damage and gives you the card draw. Um, so there's a lot of really, really fun cards in the deck that help propel different possible ways to win.
I like that. I think that's really fun to see. It's like playing against that. Like you never know what to expect for what you're going to be trying to do to win the game.
Yeah,
It'll
for
be
sure.
different based on whichever alternate win condition you've got going on at the time.
Right, exactly. And of
And
course,
yeah,
people see the alt-win cons, so they want to remove them as fast as they can, you know.
yeah,
But that's why there's so many, and then it's because then I have things like I have both Ghostly Prison and Propaganda, so it's making it difficult for people to attack me. So then they're like, okay, well, do I remove that or do I remove the win
mm,
con? They get stuck on what to remove, and I have something like a Platinum Angel where it's like you
ooh.
can't you can't lose, your opponents can't win, so they have to find a way to remove that. And obviously it doesn't always play out at the same time, but it affords me a good amount of protection.
Yeah, yeah. I I love to see Platinum Angel in a deck. Unfortunately, I've been like basically banned from using that card in my
Oh
play
my God, I love
groups.
that card.
It's always been a favorite of mine. I will never
Mine
forget
too.
like the first time I saw it. I was just like, this card's complete. Like this breaks the game, doesn't it? How does this exist? Yeah, and then
It's
I
so good.
remember a game I played with Platinum Angel where two of my opponents somehow were able to get copies of it. So there were three
Uh-huh.
on the battlefield at
Oh
once,
no.
and it was just a little bit of a nightmare, but also a hilarious story in hindsight.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it doesn't go in every deck.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I sneezed. I was like trying not to be offensively like "Chewy," like in the middle of the podcast. Um, yeah, it doesn't belong in every deck. It doesn't go in every deck, but when it fits right, it feels good. And then people
Yeah.
aren't that mad at it because like it fits in this deck, and people will see it and they'll be like, "Oh no," but they're not that mad because I've just been giving them favors the whole time. So by
Right.
the
Yeah.
time I get it out, they're like, "All right, fine," you know.
You can have
And
it.
I'm like, "I'm not winning yet. I'm just preventing you from winning."
I love that. So yeah, it's as far as like the strategy of the deck goes, what is it about the deck that you like most about playing it?
I think what I like most about playing it is it's twofold. First of all, I feel absolutely zero stress when I play it. I don't
Mm,
feel like competitive or the pressure to win or resolve issues that are going on the board.
yeah.
Usually I protect myself pretty well. People aren't removing too much unless they board wipe and everybody's stuff is removed. Um, I just don't feel like I have to resolve problems on the board. I'm just like playing for fun. People are benefiting from my gifts, and then I'm like, "Ooh, what you gonna do about that?" Like, I basically light a match and watch the world burn. And
Nice. Yeah.
that's kind of fun, you know? And the second thing I like about it, which I actually didn't expect, is the response I've had to it.
Mm,
A lot of people, when asked what deck do you like playing against, a lot of people have tagged me in posts or said, I love playing against Ron's Kwain deck. And it's not just Kwain, but it's like my deck specifically. And that just makes me feel so good and so proud because I work really hard on my decks and I don't like to look at deck lists ahead of time because I don't want to be swayed. And if I kind of browse deck lists, then it doesn't quite feel like mine. It feels like I've just copied ideas from a bunch of different lists. So I worked really hard on making this like the group huggiest, and I feel like I succeeded, but people really enjoy playing against it. And even people I've never played with have tagged me in posts like Ron's Kwain deck does that, or Ron's Kwain deck does, is fun to play against. Like, go look at this deck list, and it's so cool to see the response that it's gotten and how much love people give it. So I love playing it because people really like it. So
I think that's a sign of when you know you've built like a very successful deck, is if people remember playing against it and they're like,
yeah,
I want to play against it again. Like I loved it last time. Yeah, I think a lot of times I'll think about like, did I have a good time playing that deck? I'm not sure. It didn't super work well, or like this thing didn't go as I wanted it to. But if you ask your opponents, you're like, did you like playing against this deck? Like, be honest with me. And if they did and they want to do it again, I think that's a good deck.
yeah.
Like that's what you want.
Or like the first time that I played it with people, they immediately talked about it. They're like, Ron, that deck is so fun, or that thing is so cool. Like, what card is that? I love that response. It makes me feel so good that it just like I always have it. When you go somewhere and you're kind of deciding what decks to bring and you're like, I don't want to bring everything. I'm just going to bring 4 decks. And it's like, you got to narrow down which ones you might bring. Kwain is always a must bring. I never bring it. Yeah. It's just become that deck that like, no matter what, I can play it.
I love that. Yeah. I'm going to be a little spoiled. The next event I'm going to, the MTG Summit, is in my hometown, so I like don't have to think about which decks to bring. But
right,
yeah, I have been thinking about that a lot lately. Like if I had to go somewhere, which I would like to start doing again.
Cool. I will see you at the summit, so we can play Kwain together.
Yes. Okay. I would absolutely love that.
Okay. Perfect.
Let's do it. Yeah, I'm excited for that, and in this Kwain deck, like. I'm loving all the kind of like obscure older cards too.
Oh yeah.
That like they totally fit, but I've just never seen like Celestial Convergence before. I'm like,
oh yeah,
what is this thing? It's so funny.
Yeah, Celestial Convergence is one of the older cards, and it's a win con. It comes in with 7 omen counters, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you remove an omen counter from it, and once all the omen counters are gone, the person with the highest life total wins the game. And if 2 people are tied for highest life total, then the game is a draw. So you have to hope that you have the highest life total by 7 turns. But yeah, it's a 4-drop 7-turn win con.
I've always been a fan of cards that add kind of like the feel of a mini game going on within the bigger game. And
yeah, there's a lot of those in here.
Yeah. I think the idea of just having a whole bunch of those in a deck, so you're like, ooh, okay, we got like 5 more turns for Celestial Convergence, but then also there's like this Azor's Elocutors going on over here. Like, yeah,
that one's just a 5-turn win con.
That was good.
Assuming that nobody deals damage to you, because when somebody deals damage, it removes a counter. So as long as nobody's dealing damage to you, you keep adding a counter, and when you're at 5, then you win.
So good. Yeah.
That
kind of thing, it's so entertaining because you don't know what to expect or exactly what to do, because it's not like within your usual game plan probably to have to deal with people filibustering and yeah. One
of the cards I always think about taking out, but it has benefited before, but one of the cards I think about taking out is Meletus Charlatan. It's a 3-drop creature, but you can pay 3 and tap it, and the controller of target instant or sorcery spell copies it, and that player may choose new targets for the copy. And so it's in my possession, but if I have the open mana, I can choose to copy a sorcery or an instant for somebody else. And so if they like played a removal on something or took an extra turn and I have the open mana, I could choose to allow them to do it again. Um, so I obviously don't want that to be a game ender. But it has come in handy when like somebody was particularly out of hand and somebody removed one piece and I'm like, would you like to remove another piece? It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's not my favorite card in the deck, but so I always toss around the idea of getting rid of it, but it has come in handy before. So
Yeah,
everything's in there for a reason.
makes sense. Yeah, and I bet you could get a lot of pretty sweet deals out of that too. Like, if I give you a
hmm
second copy of that thing you just did, will you
Yeah.
help me with this other thing? Or, yeah, something like that. So,
Yeah, for sure. And like I have a rogue's passage in the deck. I don't even attack, but I can give unblockable to somebody
oh,
else.
that's
So
fun.
it's like I purposely picked lands with abilities that I could maybe use to help someone else as opposed to myself.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever put Rogue's Passage in a deck like thinking I would want to use it on someone else's creature, but it
Yeah.
totally makes sense in this deck. Yeah, that's a
And the
great.
total opposite, Labyrinth of Scophos, is remove
Mm,
target attacking or blocking creature from combat. So it's kind of the same concept. Um, I could choose Karn's Bastion proliferates. I could choose to proliferate for a player.
ooh, okay, that's
So,
fun.
a lot of my lands are designed to benefit other people.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah, and I love that every piece of the deck fits the theme. Like even the lands
Yeah.
go in that direction that you want to be as nice as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about the like alternate win conditions as kind of like the main way this deck wins. Is there anything else
Mm-hmm.
you want to mention when it comes to just like the goals of playing this deck?
I think that's pretty much it. It's pretty straightforward. But I will say there's no like I said there's no removal, there's no tutors in this technically because I do have one tutor. This is like my favorite card in this deck and I will never swap it out. Um it's an older card as well. It's called the Noble Benefactor. It's a 2/2 cleric and it costs 3 to play. If he is put into any graveyard from play, each player may search his or her library for any one card and put it into their hand, and then shuffle. So, Noble Benefactor, as soon as he's put into the graveyard in any way, like from play, so like as long as he's destroyed, killed, whatever, everyone gets to tutor for anything, and it goes right to hand. Um,
I have always thought this is such a funny card. It's
yeah,
like, yeah,
he's so perfect for this deck. It's so
definitely.
great. And I mean, knowing the if he's in play, knowing the position I'm in, I would choose which alternate win con best fit where I was at.
Mm,
So if I'm not over 40 life, then I wouldn't choose Felidar Sovereign, because it's not really going to get me the immediate win. I might choose Approach of the Second Sun, or I might choose
yeah,
Triskaidekaphile if I have a lot of cards in hand. Things like that.
yeah,
But that's the only technically the only tutor that I have in the deck, but it's an everyone tutors.
yeah. Makes sense. Yeah, this one is a funny card for me just because I've seen it in my play groups in person before, and in those groups we like know each other's decks so well that this card kind of adds like this hilarious mind game where each of us
Yeah.
like kind of knows what the others are going to go for. So then do you like switch to tutor for something that like answers the things you think they might
Yeah.
go
Do you
for?
switch to tutor for like the response or the
Yeah.
removal or whatever?
It's always really fun. We're all just kind of like looking through our decks, like eyeing each other.
It's kind of
Yeah,
rock, paper, scissors.
exactly. Yeah, that's it. I love it. Yeah, that's a really fun one and perfect for this deck too.
Yeah, I love it.
Kind of on the other side of that, what would you say are some of this deck's weaknesses? And like not in a bad way. Every deck has weaknesses that you
Yeah.
know, but yeah, what would you say about this one?
I would say it's probably a little slow to get off the ground.
Mm,
There are some low cost things, but a majority of the deck's permanents are 3 mana value. Uh, but there are some things that are some permanents that are quite costly to play. Um, and there's not a ton of ramp. Um, I have to update the list because I did put an Azorius Signet back into it. I swapped out something for it. But so I have an Arcane Signet, a Soul Ring, and an Azorius Signet in there. I also have a Thought Vessel. So there's more ramp in it now than there was before. Um, but it can be a little slow to start depending on your card draw. But thankfully you have a lot of opportunities to draw more cards and get other options in hand. Um, so that's probably
gotcha.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, something I'm always trying to add more card draw just because that gets you your lands, your ramp, kind of like all the things. Uh,
It doesn't have a lot of good blocking creatures, so if
mm,
people are like swinging out with like tokens or something like that, I tend to I don't want to lose the creatures that I have out because they have some kind of benefit for me. So, depending how big and how many the attackers are, I try not to block if I can help it, or I try to have other protection out for that. Um, but because I'm giving everybody so many gifts, I'm usually the last to deal with. They kind of like leave me alone because I'm helping everyone.
right, yeah.
And then I don't have to worry about attacks until like the very end. If I haven't won by alternate win con by then. But yeah, it's fun to play and it does really well. So there are I don't really keep track of my wins with it, but it's like 50-50, you know? Like there's sometimes I win and I win really like stupidly or silly or I'm like, "Oh my God, I never even thought I could win like this." And it's like some kind of new way. Um and sometimes I just lose miserably and it's fine, you know? I'm like,
Yeah.
"Okay, well, I had a good time playing it, so I don't care." Um, it's a little slow. I would probably say is its weakness, but it is a 2 mana commander, so at least I can get him out quickly and start beginning the card draw and the life gain. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think it's kind of nice that Kwain does do a pretty good job of like being an early creature that blocks pretty well. A 1/3 I feel like can block pretty well
yeah,
for the first few turns, early turns of the game.
yeah.
Um, and then kind of like hold it back while you're trying to get your ramp and stuff up and running.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, cool. Okay. Do you have any notable cards that you want to shout out that fit like generic roles of a deck but that are spicier for this one? That's kind of a funny question though because this deck, like all I'm seeing are weird spicy cards that you wouldn't really see anywhere else. So, yeah, anything like that you want to shout out?
I would probably say Oath of Lieges. I think this is the
Ooh.
most green of white cards. It's an older enchantment and it only costs 2. It's 1 white pip and a colorless. And it says during each player's upkeep, if that player controls fewer lands than target opponent, that player may search his or her library for a basic land card and put it into play. Not
Ooh.
even tapped, you just put it into play and then shuffle your library afterwards. So everybody at their upkeep, if any one player has more lands than you get to search for a basic land, put it right into play, untapped, and shuffle. And it's an enchantment, so it stays on the board the whole time, and it's cheap to play. So this is like the most green white card I've ever seen.
It really is, yeah.
So it's a really good ramp piece for a white deck, but it gives everyone the ramp. So, a lot of
Gotcha.
people overlook it because they don't want to give that benefit to other people, but people tend to not remove it because it's not just benefiting you, but it gives you consistent land drops. So it's a really
Yeah.
fun way to ramp unexpectedly.
Yeah, that's funny. And people have been saying that white doesn't ramp as well, but like I haven't really seen this card before, but I could see it being really nice in a lot of in more decks than just group hug decks. Like Yeah, that's a fun one. I don't think I've ever seen this card before. So one of my favorites that I kind of probably force in a lot of decks that I shouldn't is Midnight Clock.
Oh
That one.
yeah, Midnight Clock has been talked about quite a bit recently. I feel like I keep seeing it come up,
Mm,
and I was like, I have that in Kwain.
yeah.
But yeah, it's really good like graveyard recursion. So
Yeah, and I could see that being kind of like a clutch save in this deck if you
yeah,
somehow like get your graveyard huge and then
right.
accidentally like somebody removes Jace and Lab Maniac or something like
Yeah,
that. Yeah, you
yeah,
could emergency ring the midnight clock and shuffle your hand and graveyard back into your library.
right. And it's also a ramp piece, so it's,
Yeah,
at the very least you're adding a blue with it. So
totally. Yeah, I really like that one. And I definitely played in some graveyard decks where I like maybe don't want it to go off, but there are some
yeah,
cases where you still might in graveyards. So yeah,
yeah, for sure.
cool. Okay, and then so my next question is: do you have any pet cards that you have in this deck that you can't resist playing? I know we talked about Noble Benefactor. Sounds like it's
Noble
probably one of those.
Benefactor, Noble Benefactor for sure is like my biggest pet card for this deck. I love
Nice.
that card. Um, yeah, I know offhand like Noble Benefactor is my favorite by far, but Triskaidekaphile is probably up there as well.
Okay.
I have this in another deck, one other deck. It's in my Stranger Things deck
Ooh, nice.
because I do have a bit of card draw in that. So Triskaidekaphile's in there, and also it's a little bit human tribal, so it just fits well in that deck as well. But yeah, so
Cool.
Noble Benefactor and Triskaidekaphile are probably my favorite cards in this deck.
Okay. I was gonna follow that up with which alternate win condition is your favorite. Is that also a Triskaidekaphile?
Love Triskaidekaphile, but it's because it's a creature, it's very easy to remove. I
Mm.
think easiest win condition in here is Approach of the Second Sun because it's a sorcery. So you cast it, you gain 7 life, you put it 7 cards down, and then usually this deck draws so many cards that I'm
Ooh,
able
yeah.
to draw it and cast it the next turn. So unless somebody mills it out or finds a way for me to draw it into my graveyard, or unless somebody has like a really like specific good counter for it, then then it's very easy to win with it once it's been played. So it's probably the win condition that has won the most in this deck. But I do love Triskaidekaphile as a win condition on its own.
Yeah,
I
I
like
really
that.
like that too.
I was born on Friday the 13th.
Ooh, nice. Okay.
So,
I love it.
I love that it's like a win con that's like 13 cards in hand. It's kind of like, like a bad luck omen.
Yep.
So it's kind of like fun for me. And just to make matters worse, to add insult to injury, I was born Friday the 13th on a full moon, which is like, I think
Wow.
it's only happened like 9 times that whole like century, and I was born on one. So, yeah, it's a fun fact.
So
So
you're
I really love that win con.
yeah, that makes sense. So you're like super haunted then, is what you're saying.
Apparently, yeah. I've actually had really good luck for
Mm.
considering like, the bad luck omen rumor, but it's I've had pretty good luck in my life, which is nice, but yeah, I'm probably like rotten on the inside.
I love it. I think I love these. Like Triskaidekaphile is awesome. I think I just got to give my favorite to Azor's Elocutors though, just
Huh.
because purely for the fact that it uses a thing called a filibuster counter. That's just like that's brilliant. I don't know
Yeah.
what else there's to say, but
It's such a cute name too. It's like I have no
yeah.
idea what a filibuster counter is supposed to do, but I'm just, we're here for it. It sounds
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, it sounds very official, very Azorius like Senate.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so what would you say is the MVP card of the deck, or like the best card that you think you just want to draw all the time?
Um, Forced Fruition
Mm.
is a good one. Um, I also like Well of Ideas. It gives a lot of card draw, but also you additional card draw. So when it enters the battlefield, you draw two cards. At the beginning of each player's draw step, that player draws an additional card. But at the beginning of your draw step, you draw two additional cards. So it gives everyone a benefit, but it gives you a better benefit.
Nice. Yeah.
Um, Also kind of same with Alhammer's Archive. That only benefits you. And because Kwain himself allows everybody to draw a card and gain a life, you would then draw two cards and gain two life.
Ooh.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's twice, it doubles it for you. So there are some things in there that kind of I always hope to draw into because they're beneficial to me.
Yeah, makes sense. I hadn't realized Alhammer's Archive is like basically perfect for Kwain. Those are like the two
Yeah,
things that Kwain does. So yeah,
exactly.
nice. Yeah, and it's nice to have ways to kind of like turn the symmetry of some of the effects to being more like on your side.
Yeah. Well, like if, for example, if Alhammer's Archive is out and I decide to windfall and discard a big hand and draw the number of cards equal to the number of cards in my hand, I'm not only making everyone draw that number, but then I double it for myself. So if I have
Ooh.
those like Labman or Jace win cons, I could easily deck myself on purpose to win with that win con.
Yeah, I could see that going pretty fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, with some of these other cards like Forced Fruition doubled will
Yeah.
it'll go pretty quick.
Yeah, so it's not really like a win con in and of itself, more so that it's kind of a combo. It's like
Yeah, yeah.
these pieces work well together, and under the right circumstances, you can make it work in your favor, you know?
Yeah,
Like, and
totally.
I didn't realize that immediately when building it. I just like when I first built it, I was like, "Oh, Windfall, that adds card draw. Everybody likes card draw. Let's do it. I'm gonna make everybody draw cards." And then I was like, "Wait a minute, I could make people draw a lot of cards." And then it's like, if I can get them to draw themselves out, then how can I do that, or how can I get myself to be drawn out with the right win con out? So I started to try to like big brain energy it, and
Mm,
and this is what I came up with. So I was like, yeah, there's like 10 to 12 alternate win cons in the deck, but there are also other ways to win. That's not necessarily just an alternate win con, but it's kind of a combination of pieces that with the right moving parts work well together.
I like that also as a backup plan because just drawing more cards helps you get to your alternate win conditions. So they kind of work. It like works together really well
Right.
with the overall game plan too.
And I
Yeah.
mean, how many pieces of removal do people have? Are they going to have 13 pieces of removal? Because,
Right.
like there's a lot of win con. Like you gotta beat me before I get to them because you're not going to have enough to remove them all. So that's kind of the fun part. But I am giving benefits to people and taking risks that they may draw into their own win cons.
Yeah.
So it's a little element of both, but it's still fun. Like I'm not stressed that to get beat while playing
Totally.
this.
Yeah.
I still feel good playing it regardless.
I love it. Yeah, that's kind of the like spicy thing when it comes to cards like Forced Fruition is like people should probably get rid of it as soon as they can, but it's so hard to
Hmm.
resist drawing all
Yeah,
those cards. Like you just
it's
gotta.
gambling mentality.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm benefiting off of this temptation.
Definitely a couple different fallacies going on with that
Yeah.
psychology. Yeah, I love that. So, what has been your favorite like in-game moment that you've had while playing this deck?
I can tell you the exact It was really satisfying, and I feel almost bad like saying this, but I was on a panel at I think it was Command Fest Philly, and I was with on the panel with Giraffe and Nat, and somebody had
Mm,
asked each of us what deck do we hate playing against and what deck do we love playing against or love losing to or something. And like Giraffe and Nat said that her least favorite deck that she hates playing against is Yuriko, and her favorite deck to lose to is my Kwain deck. And when it got to me, I said I love losing to Yuriko. So, I was like, it's so funny because we were like totally opposite. And actually I had lost to a Perforos deck earlier that day that I found so good that it made me want to build it. Like I was like, this is so good. So I wasn't even mad that I was beat by it because I was like, what? My mind is blown. So yeah, I said Yuriko and Perforos. So we as content creators were given ampersand cards to give to people who essentially headhunted us. Guests of the con were invited to seek us out and play a game with us, and if they could beat us, then we would give them an ampersand
Ooh,
promo.
that's fun.
And yeah, so this guy came up to me after the panel and he said, I want to play your Kwain deck against my Yuriko deck. And I said, cool, let's do it. So it was a four-person pod, and this other guy played a little bit of a mill deck. It wasn't aggressive, but there was some milling going on, which helped propel my mechanism. And then somebody else who, poor thing, just like lost really quickly. I don't even remember what he was playing because he was out really early on, but he was just enjoying the shenanigans. So then it was down to me and Yuriko guy, and it was really down to the wire. And I pulled off one of these. It was like the first time I had ever pulled it off, but I pulled off one of these like I decked him out type things, and he like probably would have won the next turn, but I decked him out before he got to, and he
Whoa.
literally was like head in his hands in disbelief. Like he was like, "No, I was gonna blah blah blah." Like his head was in his hands and his eyes were wide, and he was just so upset looking, and I was just like grinning, and I'm like, that was a fun game, like I'm like, are you okay? And he was like, he wanted an ampersand promo so bad, and he thought for sure he was gonna beat me with that Yuriko deck. Like hands down, he was like, this is easy, this is an easy win. And the other two guys were just like in hysterics laughing, and they were like, this is amazing, I've never seen anything like this. And like I was just like relishing in it. And poor guy, I felt so bad. He actually asked me, I thought it was a little fresh, but he was like, can I still have the ampersand promo? And I was like, sure, because I felt so bad for him. Like he just looked so upset. He's like, I want one so bad, like I don't want anything more than this. And I was like, you can have one even though you lost, whatever.
That's so good.
Oh, whatever. He shot his shot, and I gave it to him because I just felt really bad for the murder. But
Yeah, the massacre even.
but that was probably my favorite. I hope he hears this. But that was my favorite moment with this deck because it was such a satisfying, unexpected win. That people were like, "Oh, Yuriko, that's nasty. Like everyone's gonna lose," and it's
Right,
like,
yeah.
no, 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 the little bunny won. Yeah, it's like it was just so funny.
It is.
It
Yeah,
was a silly win, but that's kind of why I liked it. It's memorable because it was silly.
yeah, that's so good. I love moments like that. It's kind of funny how if you take like a really like unexpected silly deck and like go up against something that is kind of like generally feared, or like Eureka, something like that, like you don't really know, it's Commander, you don't know what is going to happen, there's so much going on
Yeah.
that yeah, anyone has a chance, and every silly little card is going to do something weird. And yeah, I love that Kwain was able to just kind of like turn a Yuriko deck on its head like that. That's incredible.
Yeah. And of course, it doesn't always do that. Some Eurocode decks are CEDH and very aggressive and fast, and this
Right.
deck is slow, so it doesn't have that kind of response for things. It doesn't have removal. So it doesn't always pan out that way, but it panned out that way this game, and it just happened to be very memorable for me.
I love that. That is such a good
Yeah.
moment. Okay, yeah, I'm increasingly getting excited to play against a Queen deck because I can see like all the cards going on in here. Like I see them, but
Mhm.
I feel like you have to see them in a game and like experience them
Yeah.
through playing to really get the to see what's happening here. Okay, so we've reached the last question that I have for you for today. And that is if people out there are interested in either building a Kwain deck of their own or maybe some kind of like similar deck with a similar strategy, what advice would you give to those people?
I would say build something that you would want to play against, build something that is truly fun for everyone at the table. A deck that isn't going to make you feel bad if you lost with. A deck where you just it's you leave it up to chance. There's no strategy. It just depends on what you draw, and what you draw determines where you want to take the game, you know? So if I
Mm.
have the Alhammar's Archive in hand and I have the Windfall, then I know where I want to go with it. But if I never draw those cards, then I kind of have to make do with what I have drawn. And that kind of propels your plan. I utilized Scryfall. I searched key terms a lot, and I looked up alternate win con cards in the colors that I'm playing. So I looked up the keywords "you win the game" or "you can't lose the game" or "your opponent can't win," and I put in every single card that said that in this deck. But of course, you want to give yourself blockers, but the creatures should be purposeful as well. So I have cards that ETB or cards that allow you to do something or get some kind of benefit either when they enter or exit the battlefield. And they still are good blockers, but they have other, maybe tap abilities or something like that. So they're not just like wasting space. They're doing something else. And preferably something that's multi-use, like at each upkeep, something happens, as opposed to just one time. Um, I would I put in a lot of it's artifact heavy and it's enchantment heavy. Those are the things that I put the most in because I didn't really have to focus much on removal. Um, I padded it really well with a lot of protection so that it's hard for people to remove my stuff or get through to attack. And that's really it. I just picked things
Nice.
that people weren't super offended by and wouldn't cause like a salty game. I just wanted it to be benefit, benefit, benefit for everyone else, and like surprise, I win. It's like,
Cool. Yeah.
silliness.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I feel like there's a lot of thought put into it. Like it's easy to tell, and I especially like the point about uh, like not worrying about removal and instead adding like protection spells and like some counter spells that in some ways like a counter spell is like removing your opponent's removal, but it extra kind of helps here where you're trying to protect your like enchantment that's about to go off and win or something like that. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much for sharing your deck with me and letting me ask you all these questions about it, and just yeah, taking the time to come on and record a podcast with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been so much fun and the conversation has been really awesome. So I'm looking forward to meeting at the summit and getting some games in.
Yes, me too. It's gonna be so strange. Like so many people I've just talked to online are gonna be there
Yeah,
in person in real life. That's so weird.
I know. We exist.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's gonna be so much fun. And
Yeah, the number one thing people say to me when they meet me in person is, "Wow, you're so short," because they're like, "Your personality is 7 feet tall, so I expected you to be taller." And I guess they thought I'm like, "How tall did you think I'd be?" And I guess most people say like they think I'm gonna be like 5'8" or something like that, and I'm 5'2". So people are really surprised when they see me and I'm a lot lower than they expected me to be.
that's so
So,
funny.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what it is when I see people like on screen. I just always assume they're like at least 6 feet tall.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sure I'll see lots of people in person and be like, oh yeah, okay, you're you're actually like
Y-
a different size from 6 feet tall, which is what
You're
I feel
not
like.
6 feet tall at all.
Yeah. That's so
Yeah.
funny. Cool. Okay, well, yeah, I mean, would you like to shout out where everyone can find you and the kind of things you're working on as we wrap up the show?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm doing a lot of in-person conventions upcoming. I'll be at Commander Sealed in Rochester this weekend. I will be at Magic 30 in at the end of October. I'm going to Oktoberfest in Philadelphia in
Ooh.
November, and also in November is MTG Summit. So that's what I have going on for the fall, as far as in-person events. You can find me everywhere usernames exist at AGirlNamedRon, and all of my links and sponsorships and affiliates programs are in my Linktree, which is linktree/AGirlNamedRon.
Awesome. And I will have links to your link tree in the description of this episode. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Yeah. Everyone go check out Ron's links and definitely subscribe on Twitch. And that's also a lot of in-person events. That's really cool.
Yeah. I had something almost every 2 weeks this
Nice.
whole summer. It's been really hectic, but I'm so grateful, and I'm really, really honored for the opportunities. So,
That's so cool. I love it. Yeah, thank you one last time just for coming on and spending the time. I really appreciate it. It's been an absolute pleasure. Yeah, and anyone out there who wants to talk to me, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at the Faerie Conclave. This episode will be on podcast platforms, but also on YouTube. So if you want to go start listening to episodes on YouTube, I think that's a great way to do it. But I think that's it. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and I hope to see you again next time.